All right, guys. So, first thing is thanks for coming out. The key for a lot of CrossFit gyms, just like we did with the What is CrossFit piece, is trying to educate our members into why we do the things we do, right? And so, not every CrossFit gym does this. That's okay. It's just a little bit of extra that we try to do for you guys to share that information so you can make good choices. Now, I will openly say, and I've said it to many people, I have been nutritionally agnostic since I started doing CrossFit. And I simply mean is that everybody's way of eating or their motivation to eat a certain way is completely up to them. So I'm not going to say to any of you, you have to eat this way, right? Because I'm probably not doing that either. So, right? And so it's just trying to be smart. And the idea today is to give you some insight into the CrossFit protocols so that you guys can start making more educated decisions so that when you're eating, you want to take the things to the next level or you want to make some adjustments to your nutrition, you can see where we come from the perspective of CrossFit. So what you get out of this is completely up to you, right? This is just more information for you guys to make more educated decisions because I would say, and some of you probably may agree, is that there are three rails of things that people think they know more than they actually do. Religion, politics, and nutrition, right? Everyone has their way of believing. They think they're right, no matter how educated or lack of educated they are, right? And so nutrition is definitely one of those, which is why, again, I have never really kind of came down with any kind of way of eating. If you come to me and ask questions, I will gladly tell you what I'm about to tell you, right? But if you don't want to do that and you want to kind of do your own thing, that is completely up to you. So for those that are going to be watching this later, everyone has a handout with that. I'll put that as a link on the YouTube video so they can have that for later reference. Okay? So how I'm planning to present this today. We are going to unpack the first two sentences of the 100 words, or fitness in 100 words, sorry. So, eat meat and vegetables, nuts and seeds, some fruit, little starch, and no sugar. Keep intake to levels that will support exercise, but not body fat, okay? So what I'm gonna break down for you today is the how, the what, and the how much. So quality, quantity, etc. And then of course, going into some practices as you guys have kind of already read through our handout, some of the practices or protocols that you can use to try to keep yourself on track, some of the supplements that we may discuss if you have those questions. And so it's just a way for you to have a little bit more information when we're making choices on how or when we or what we eat, right? Okay, so before we get into the quality, trying to kind of set the framework of why we want to eat well. So that pyramid that you see we post, or it's on the board right now, is called the theoretical hierarchy of an athlete. Okay? And at the bottom of that is nutrition, meaning nutrition is the foundation of this. If you eat like crap, you're probably not going to get the best results from no matter which program you choose, right? Orange Theory, CrossFit, bodybuilding. If you don't eat well, you're not going to get the results you have on top of that, right? And so we don't need to go through the other four pieces, but nutrition is the foundation of everything, okay? So that is a key piece. Now, when we talk about nutrition and where you are, where you start, and how it impacts you or what you're trying to achieve, the next graph, or it's on, I think, the second page, is what we call the sickness, wellness, fitness continuum. We are all somewhere on that continuum, right? So, of course, people that are fit, right? We're talking about the elites, right? We kind of think of ourselves as fit. We're probably somewhere between wellness and fit. But it also has based on quantitative metrics, just like CrossFit, right? We quantify things by recording our times, our weights, how many rounds we do, right? Some sort of quantitative metric. The same thing is true with what we call health markers, blood pressure, LDL, HDL, triglycerides, all of these health markers you can get from your doctor, right? If you're fit, you don't have high blood pressure, right? If you're well in the wellness area, you might have high blood pressure. That could be a genetic issue, right? But if you're sick, I can promise you, you don't have a 3-minute Fran. If that makes sense, right? And so we're all somewhere there. And so why I kind of start with those two things is because I want you to understand that nutrition is the top priority, the foundation of what we do. But in order for us to become fit, for us to become a person that can do heavy weights, fast things, all of those things that you see at an elite level, then you have to understand what it's going to take to get you there. And a lot of times we kind of, in layman's terms, when we talk about losing weight, it's that last 5 pounds. People don't understand what it takes, if you've never done it, to get those last 5 pounds, right? It's actually ratcheting up. You've committed to 90% eating right, sleeping, training, all of the things. Now you're going to go to 100. Are you willing to go to 100% to get those last 5 pounds to achieve whatever you're trying to achieve, right? And so that gets into the motivation and the goal setting as we get into the later pieces, okay? So why I kind of present it that way is that I don't want you to think that, man, I'm never going to get fit. Most of us aren't. But we also need to recognize what it takes to become that, right? And as fitness grows within CrossFit, the people that are there are pushing it further and further, right? They're professional athletes at this point. 10 years ago, that wasn't the case. Some of us could, right, eat bad foods, drink a couple beers on the weekends, and still get away with those things. That's not the case anymore when you talk about the extremes. But you can go to the other extreme too. Just because you start in a place of sickness and have all these poor blood markers or health markers doesn't mean you can't get to the other side. It's just that your road's going to be a little bit longer than someone else's, especially if it's either you're starting where you're going to be overweight, you're starting where you may have some genetic health issues or some autoimmune issues. That doesn't mean that you can't get to the other side. You just might have to work a little harder than someone else. But the key is that we're trying to make you aware of it so that we can get you going in that direction, because the further you get to the other side of fit, the easier it is for you to stay healthy through your lifespan. So when we talk about health, what is health in CrossFit? It goes back to when we were discussing it, what is CrossFit when we did that previous seminar it is your ability to increase your work capacity across broad and modal domains across your lifetime. So if someone starts off up high fitness, right, an elite level. Now, I can't say this about some professional athletes because they just fucking nosedive, right? But if they start up here and maintain that same level of fitness, it's just going to decline at a much shorter slope, right? Where for us that we're down here, right, we're going to come down faster because we're not pushing ourselves to that elite level to get to that level of fitness that keeps us up high, right? Does that make sense? Okay. Questions so far? Okay. So that sets the foundation of what we're going to discuss, right? Because we've got to understand that nutrition is the underlying pin to my success in my exercise and my fitness and my wellness. And we can also chart where we are on that continuum, and we can go back and forth, right? We might get to a point where it's like, you know what, this next 3 months, I'm just going to crush it. And I get over there. And then it's like 3 months are over. It's like, yay, I can start eating donuts again. And then we're back to where we were. We're all guilty of that, right? And so it's just trying to look at it from the standpoint of longevity, of like, what do I want to do? And I think that's where we get into the topic or discussion of maintaining a good quality of life and being healthy physically and mentally with your relationship with food. Because I promise you, having done bodybuilding in my 20s, it is not a healthy relationship with food when you're in contest prep. It's not. Like it's why a lot of people have, especially men and women alike. Women a little bit more than men. It's just, we're built differently. But we want a good, long-term, healthy relationship with food. Okay? All right, so first thing we do kind of discuss is this idea of insulin resistance, or the idea of role of insulin. Okay, I'm not going to dive into some of these things. I want to cover very surface level things. What I simply need you to understand is that when someone tells you they have type 2 diabetes and they are just maintaining their type 2 diabetes with medication, they're fucking lying to themselves. They are. Type 2 diabetes is just your body's inability to process insulin. You are insulin resistant. Type 1 diabetes, completely different thing. Your pancreas, right, is not creating or barely processing or developing, giving you any insulin. So you have to survive. That's a completely different thing, right? Insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, is because you are eating lots of processed carbohydrates. You're not exercising. You are on that side of the continuum. Can you fix it? Absolutely. You know what you do? That. And that's a big challenge for most people because the pharmacy industry wants you to do this. Take a pill from cradle to grave. They want you on medication, right? You not doing those things doesn't help them. And so they want you to believe, and if you listen to the commercials, they want you to believe that you have to live with type 2 diabetes now. I'm maintaining my A1C, right? They want you to believe that you can't fix that problem because that keeps you medicated. All right, so the role of insulin plays two things, right? Our ability to be able to process, it gets in your bloodstream, process foods, it's supposed to increase and then get back down as we eat food before and after, but it also helps with hormone regulation. This is as far as I'm going, right? There's a whole section that you can learn on just how insulin plays a role in your diet. I just want you to understand it's a very important role, right? And anyone that has pre-diabetes, which is bullshit, or type 2 diabetes, they can fix that by that, taking control and ownership over their nutrition. Okay? So we've already gone through the idea of the sickness, wellness, and fitness continuum, but the idea here is that you want to be able to establish blood markers, just like we say we want to set benchmarks of like, okay, I can do Fran in 10 minutes right now. If I train and I focus on all of the things, I can get it down to 5 minutes and 6 minutes. Have I gotten fitter? Yeah. It's the same thing with your nutrition. If you go to your doctor, you get your blood work done, and it's like, oh, wow, I've got some elevated things. Well, I'm going to start taking better control of my nutrition, and then I'm going to see an improvement in my health markers. It's a quantitative way for us to look at that. Okay? We can also do benchmarks of like, I started to eat better, right? I'm losing weight, that's great. We'll talk about weight in a second, right? But I also improved my Fran time. Not just because I've been training, but I've been doing the training on top of the solid nutrition. Okay? So, how do we get there? Eating meat, vegetables, nuts, seeds, some fruit, little starch, no sugar. So that is the quality of our food. So the first thing that you want to do, whole, unprocessed foods. Okay? So what I'm about to go through, you've probably heard from any kind of Instagram influencer. You've heard from other people, but it's just reiterating that and making it simple. Eating it in that order. We'll get to the no sugar part. I'll talk about that in a second. Meat and vegetables should be the foundation of your plate. Okay? What meat you want to do, if you go to the last piece, last page. If you want to say, I don't know what to fix, there. Shopping list right there. Okay? Pick a meat that you like and eat a lot of that. Okay? That's a good start. Next thing you should have on there are the vegetables. Now, if you've talked to me long enough, you know my personal opinion on vegetables. I'm trying to do better, right? I'm trying to do better. But vegetables are very important. Okay? Micronutrients, okay? All of the things that will help, not only with the micronutrients, but satiety. So my ability to be able to stay full, right? Protein is one of the things that will help with that, but also if you eat a ton of broccoli, we'll talk about maybe doing a ton of broccoli, but if you eat a green like that, right, it's going to make you more full than some sort of liquid, right? Or something that has what is called a high glycemic index, something that's processed by your body very fast. So eat meat and vegetables. Now, when we talk about nuts and seeds, that's a catch-all for fats. So when I say fats, it's like avocados, right? We're talking about some good oils, olive oil, right? Avocado oil. I'm not going to go into the depths that CrossFit does regarding certain types of oil, canola oils and stuff like that. What I'm going to tell you is that canola oil and seed oils like that, prior to their usage for humans, was used for industrial machines. And after around, I think, World War II, they started to realize they could use it in food. And it didn't kill you, at least quickly. It is if you do it long term, right? So, nuts and seeds is a catch-all. Good quality fats. And that could be the fat that's in your meat, right? Almonds, it could be some sort of actual food itself, but that's what the nuts and seed piece is. So, some fruit. Now, what I think that simply means is that it shouldn't be more than your vegetables. Okay? Now, fruit is not sugar. So unpack that. Okay? Fruit is not sugar. And when I talk about sugar, I'm talking about processed sugars, right? So, when you eat an apple, there's actually fiber in an apple. It actually helps you. Okay? Not a lot, not compared to some other things, right? But it does slow down the digestive process, right? So some fruit, okay. Little starch, that simply means that if you're going to eat starch, you're trying to find good quality whole foods for your starches. So when you look at your plate, okay, we'll talk about how we kind of visualize these things as we go into measuring. You don't want it to be half of your plate, right? You want it to be there, but you'd be surprised there are people that go to an extreme, what we call the carnivore diet, right? We don't have to go there, but there are people that can be in an extreme diet that have not eaten carbohydrates for years. Your body does a process that actually will convert some protein into glycogen or some form of sugar. Okay, so that's why it says you don't have to have a ton of carbohydrates. Okay, now when we get into macros and how you kind of build what your food intake daily looks like, if you're an athlete, yes, you need more carbohydrates. Meaning, if you're doing this, like if I'm working out, I'm doing 2-a-days and things like that, you absolutely should be eating more carbohydrates. You should be, but what we're doing here, we're just trying to be healthy long term. Right? This is a long-term goal, not this particular 6-week period. Okay? And then, of course, we've got no sugar. Now, that's any added sugar. So I think that for a good starting point when you're thinking about resetting your nutrition, that's not a bad idea. I don't think long-term we can, again, thinking about the healthy relationship with food, thinking, oh my God, I can't have honey. I can't put some fucking Splenda in my coffee. Right? It's a balancing act. And the key thing is that, are you drinking soda? Right? Are you adding sugars that don't need to be there? Right? I know we're all probably guilty of this at least once or twice, where we take fruit and put more sugar on it. You don't need to do that. I think that's what we're talking about. Okay? So, adding sugar to your life is not going to be a bad thing. But if you're trying to reset your mindset or focus on nutrition, or you're trying to get to that end point of fitness, that's when you start talking about the true elimination of certain things, right? Okay? Because I think I was overhearing Jess talk about when she had cut sugar out, like how angry she was. But you're realizing you're kind of going through some levels of withdrawal. Caffeine's the same thing. Caffeine is the biggest drug consumed by Americans. And I know that because I'm guilty. If you knew what I drank by 10 a.m. in terms of the amount of caffeine, you'd think I was trying to just kill myself. Okay? But it is the most consumed drug we have, so sugar's the same thing. So the quality of the foods. When I say quality, it's not that you have to eat organic. Right? Could we, if you can afford that? Because that's the key thing. It's like, I'm not in here telling you that you've got to eat organic everything. But whole, unprocessed foods. You hear it all the time, the perimeter of your grocery store. Right? Things that are going to rot if you don't eat them within a timely fashion. Okay? I know everybody loves to go to Costco or go to Sam's Club and buy everything in bulk, right? But that stuff's not going to last if we are buying healthy foods, right? And so we want to try to avoid the inside as best we can, and then focusing on things that are going, a good way of looking at it is anything that will eventually spoil, right? Questions so far? Don't hesitate to ask, guys. This is your opportunity, right? People that are going to watch this on the YouTube channel later, if they're going to see these things and have questions, they don't have the opportunity to ask directly. They'd have to come to us afterwards, okay? So, quality. That was it. So the key thing, of course, like I just said, we had that section of setting yourself up for success. One thing could be a rip the Band-Aid approach. Going home, taking all the shit that you have now, and getting it out of your house. If you're like me, if it's bad, I'm most likely going to consume it in that day, right? I'm not putting, does anyone eat part of a pint of ice cream? Because you're a psycho. No one eats part of a pint of ice cream and then puts it away, right? We eat the whole thing. No way. Nope. But that what boils down to is it's a healthy relationship with food, right? We know it's bad, so I got to get it out of the house, right? So the idea being is that go ahead, take stock of what you have in your house. I'm not saying that you get rid of everything, but start making and replacing those things with better things, right? And then if you're going to do anything with that food, don't throw it away. Donate it. Could take it to a food pantry. I'm not saying that but yes, should we have everyone trying to eat healthy? Yes, but there are also people that are not in here right now thinking about their nutrition. There are a lot of people in this country that just eat to eat, right? And that's unfortunately why we have such an epidemic of obesity, okay? So don't just throw it away. If you can, please, there are people that need that kind of stuff, so take that to them. Let the food pantries do something with it. But first thing, setting yourself up for success, getting all that crap out, right? That rip the Band-Aid approach, okay? And then doing whatever you need to in terms of a routine of replenishing that. Changing your mindset, which is why I added the shopping list to that, is that sometimes people are like, oh, I don't know what to eat. Well, I'm not going to tell you what to eat every day. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to give you an inventory of things to make choices on. Because I eat a lot of red meat. There are some people that don't like red meat. They may like fish or chicken or whatever personal preferences you have. Some people may have reasons that they don't eat meat. I don't understand it, but I understand it. Okay? Same thing with the fruit, right? Try to eat seasonally. This is also a good opportunity for you to support your local farmers, right? Trying to do something local is always positive, because if you're worried about your carbon footprint, right, buying food from all over the country that has to be shipped to you, that's a big carbon footprint rather than going to your local farmer or a local farm and getting your meats that way, or eggs or whatever it is. Okay. So quantity, the next piece. Keep intake levels to support exercise but not body fat. Okay, so this is where we start to dive in a little bit more. Okay, so how much? So, where do you start? First thing is that how often are we eating? Now, there are plenty of studies that are done about, like, if I need to eat every 2 hours, if I eat once a day, intermittent fasting, all of these like buzzwords that you're going to hear within it. So what I would say is just start with a 12-hour window. That's 6 to 6. Okay? Some of us don't like to eat breakfast. That's okay. You're just going to have to consume more calories in there, because I'd be surprised if, and I'm guilty too, on days where I'm not eating enough. You'd be surprised at how many of you or people that you know, their metabolism is so jacked up because they're not eating enough, right? It's like, what'd you have today? I had an apple. Your brain needs 900 calories just to function correctly every day. There's not 900 calories in an apple, right? But I wasn't hungry. Tough shit. Figure it out. Drink a protein drink. Get some food in your system, right? So start there. Next thing, breaking it across multiple meals if you can. Now, I understand that there are people that can't eat like that. That's okay. That just means you're going to have to condense your window even more. But trying to keep your intake levels the same every day across multiple meals. Now, how many meals that is for you, it's completely up to you. Again, Whatever works for you. I understand that you have a job that doesn't allow you to do that. Here's what I will say. We won't get into supplements too much till the end. If you have enough time to pee, you have enough time to eat. I don't care if you're doing them at the same time. You get my point. You guys get my point. I'm joking when I say that. You get my point, though. My point being is that everyone says, well, I don't have enough time to eat. Then that's the first thing I ask. Do you pee? Yeah. Okay. Then be prepared to have a shake on your way in or way out. Okay? I know at least I don't personally drink protein shakes for the taste. Now, do they taste good? Sure, if I actually sat down and enjoyed them. But instead, I'm just chugging and going. Because the idea of supplementation is that it is supplementing my whole foods because I can't get whole foods in at that time. Okay? So, now breaking this down. This is where we start to get into the numbers. In terms of grams of protein per body pound, 0.8 to 1.2. Or just say 1. If I weigh 200 pounds, I try to get 200 grams of protein in my day every day. Okay? 4 ounces of chicken is 24 grams of protein. Okay? 4 ounces is about, I got a big hand, it's about this big. It's very small. Okay, it's very small. You'd be surprised at how dense 4 ounces of beef is. I'd probably say it's 2/3 of my hand. Okay? So I'm not talking a ton. Okay? So, a gram of protein per body pound for you. We'll talk about when we want to, if say that I want to be, if I'm 200 pounds and I want to be 190 or if I want to be 210. We'll talk about that in a second as we get into breaking down how much. The other thing too is breaking down into percentages. So, 30% of your intake should be protein, 30% should be fats, 40% can be carbohydrates. That's a baseline. Everything I'm telling you guys is a starting point. Okay? How you change those percentages is going to be up to you. Okay? And what you're trying to achieve and where you're at here. Okay? So, that's a good starting point. We can break down the numbers individually. If I weigh 200 pounds, I start to break down. Now, when it comes to calories, does anyone know how many calories are in a gram of protein?
4.
Good. Carbohydrates.
4.
And then fat.
9.
There you go, 9. Okay, 449. The reason I say that is because a lot of people get concerned with how many calories I'm taking in. Let's not get there. Okay, healthy relationship. What you can do is say, I'm trying to get 200 grams of protein, right? Then you can figure out how many calories are in that. I'm trying to get this many carbohydrates, this is how many is in that. I'm trying to get this much fat, that's how much is in that. The macro numbers should be a higher priority than your calorie intake, okay? Because the calories are going to be a given based on how many grams of whatever you're taking in, okay? A lot of times, too many people get caught up in this idea that I've got to eat a certain number of calories. Ignore that. Focus on what you're actually trying to eat, the quality of your protein, the amount of fat, and the amount of carbohydrates. And as you go through this process, right, and reassessing, and we'll get into all those in a second, but reassessing, you start making adjustments. You want to try to keep your protein around that same level, right? 1 gram to 1.2, or going down to 0.8 if you have to, somewhere in between there. That should never change. The things that the dials or knobs that you'll be turning, how much fat am I taking in versus how much carbohydrates I'm taking in. The more fats I take in, the less carbohydrates I can take in because there's more fat, there's more calories in a gram of fat than there is in a gram of carbohydrates. So I can end up taking like 200 grams of protein, 350 grams of carbohydrates, but only 80 grams of fat. If I kind of go to 120 grams of fat, I end up severely decreasing my number of carbohydrates because those dials have been changed. Okay, they're not equal. They're not even 2 to 1. Okay, so we'll tweak there. That's a good starting point. Now, if you're asking yourself, like, what does that look like for me? There are apps that you can use so they're kind of putting it in practice. So we set that baseline, right? A good tracking app that works for you. I know that a lot of us, I know personally in the past, I've used MyFitnessPal. It has a great inventory of things. You can put all your stuff in there. When we start talking about tracking these things to get your baseline, yes, you're going to have to track your food. Okay? Is that a long-term solution? Not necessarily. If you like to do that and it doesn't bother you physically or mentally, right, your relationship with food, then continue to do it. But you need to understand what you're taking in, how much you're taking in, so that you can start to make good decisions. And then as you start to get away from that app or that thing that you're using to track exactly how much, that you're not overeating or undereating. Okay? So it's a great way of holding yourself accountable, just like we put stuff into Wodify. Okay? It lets you know what you're doing. Okay? So once you establish that baseline, you want to implement that plan for at least 4 weeks. Okay? That's your opportunity to see and if you're having a good experience with it, right? At first, if you don't know how much you're eating or you're actually overeating, you might feel like you're not eating enough every day. Well, that kind of will let you know that maybe you've been eating too much. For some people, when they change it and they're actually eating more vegetables or eating more food, it's like, well, I feel like I'm eating all the time. Well, it's because you haven't been eating enough, right? Or the fact that 2 cups of green is a much more dense thing than 1 thing of like processed cookies, right? You know what I mean? Like that little stack of cookies is going to have more calories and is not going to be processed. It's just going to go right through your system than if you're actually eating some higher quality, dense, vegetable. Does that make sense? Okay. So setting yourself up for success by putting those things into practice, and again, at least 4 weeks. Make an assessment, make a judgment change, and then figure out where you want to go. Now, the next page, putting it into practice. Okay? So this goes into a lot of detail on how you can do these things. So the first thing is what and how much. That's establishing what I'm going to eat, meat, vegetables, nuts, seeds, so forth and so on. Right? Then basing it on the percentages of what you are going to be trying to hit 30, 30, 40. Right? Keeping intake levels to support exercise, etc. Okay? And these are just allowing you to find those things, right? Establishing health markers. Maybe you already know that you've got high triglycerides. So I've got my triglycerides, I know this is a high number, 300. Okay? That's not good. Okay? Right? If my numbers are really high, in the next 4 weeks, I'm going to go back to the doctor. I'm going to try to get my blood work done. And did I go down from 300 to 200? I'm making a good decision. I'm making good choices. I'm going to continue doing this. Right? So those are your numbers, your baselines, your assessments. Trying to do this on a daily basis, right? So I'm eating whole unprocessed foods. When I say unprocessed foods, cooking your food is fine, right? There's nothing wrong with that. Buying frozen stuff is okay too. Did I buy it in a box and does it have an ingredient list? Right? I think that's the key, right? Did I have hamburger helper? Right? That's the stuff that we try to avoid, is the stuff in the middle of the grocery store. And then, of course, we check and recheck, okay? But the other thing, too, is also making sure that you're not only taking in internal and external variables. So if you come in and you're just like, man, I had a really bad week because I wasn't getting enough sleep due to work or due to a family issue. Or like, you can't go and say, I didn't improve my Fran time. Well, how'd you sleep last night? Well, my kids were up. Right? I didn't get to sleep last night. So you have to take into consideration some of the things that you don't have control over that will impact those things as you go forward into this journey. Okay? And then you just reassess and you reapply and you adjust. So, as I said, tracking it with an app is a good starting point for us when we're doing this. And the first thing that you want to do is find an app that you find comfortable to work with, right? A lot of us use MyFitnessPal. Okay, that's a good place to go, right? You can get the premium version. I think it costs a little bit of money, right? I'm not saying you have to buy anything, but having that tracker for the first 4 weeks is what you're going to want to use to make sure you're not overeating or undereating. You're somewhere in between, okay? Now, when we start getting into tactics or kind of tools for staying on track, I think this starts to get into habits and things like that. What I want you to understand is that when you do this, If you're supposed to get 200 grams of protein a day and you get 215, it's fine. It really is. If you're supposed to get 300 grams of carbohydrates and you get 320, it's okay. It really is. Okay. The other thing, too, a lot of people don't understand is that this is not just training days. You eat this way every day. I don't care if you train 3 days a week. You eat this way every day. Just because you didn't exercise doesn't mean you don't eat. Nothing changes there. Okay? Questions so far?
I have a tip on the MyFitnessPal.
Yeah.
If you download it and say you're in Europe, it will let you scan barcodes so you don't have to pay for the premium version.
Nice.
US.
Nice. So,
Talk about training days. You take a day off on the weekend. Like not
Of what?
Not training, but like of your meals. Like you reward yourself a day, like a free day.
It's football season.
A
That's what
cheat day.
no, so hold on. Hold on. So a couple things. So let's unpack that. Because I think a lot of times when people think about the conversation of nutrition, right, is I've got to eat this way and I can never change the way I do things. Number one, that's an extreme way of looking at it, right? What you're trying to avoid is that slippery slope. I'm not a big fan of, because I've had these, cheat meals or cheat days. Okay, I'm not a fan of that mindset. Because, and I'll tell you a story. A buddy of mine, and we were training together, and this was my bodybuilding days. We had a cheat day. We started at Krispy Kreme. Dozen Krispy Kremes right there. Boom, gone. Okay? Next place, Dunkin' Donuts. And then we went to, it was a Sunday, right? Everybody thinks Sunday's our free day, right? Then, football, chicken wings and beer. Okay? Is that necessary? No. Do you know why we thought it was okay? Because it was a cheat day. You know how bad I felt for the next 48 hours? Do you get what I'm saying? So, I don't want you to think of it as like, I'm going to have a cheat day. Just make good choices. If you deviate, it's okay. If you take a day off from the gym, it's okay, right? It's the longevity of this. It's better life choices, lifestyle decisions. Everyone loves to hear that phrase. This is a lifestyle, right? I want to shoot myself for saying that so many times in my life. It's a lifestyle, okay? But it's true. If you want to go and drink beer and eat chicken wings, fine. Put that shit down for the first 4 weeks because I just want you to understand what it looks like. It's okay. It's all right. If you wake up the next day and you just get back on track, right? I think the problem with a lot of people is like, man, I ate like crap yesterday because I can't eat good the rest of the week, and then we just go downhill, right? It's the same idea. Well, I'll start Monday. Well, if we missed Monday, oh, fuck it. Well, I guess we'll have to wait till next Monday. We're all guilty of that, right? And so why I go into this kind of long conversation around cheat days, number one, don't think of it as a cheat day. This is how I'm deciding to eat today. And that's okay. It is, right? Because I try to explain to people, like, it's more about making healthy choices in the long term than it is beating yourself up for having pizza because you're at a party and your kids are having pizza. Eat the fucking pizza. It's not a big deal. Just don't eat pizza every day. Right? Don't drink beer every day. You get my point. Try to stick to this as much as you can, but don't beat yourself up if and when you choose to not do that. You know why? Because I do it. It's okay, right? It's being on track as best we can. And what I would say is don't do what I did in that particular extreme story, right? Just because you had a couple beers and you had a couple, whatevers, doesn't mean that the rest of the day needs to be shot. Some people would say, well, it's kind of like parties if they go out to dinner. Like some people would try to eat prior to that. That's taking it down here. You get what I'm saying? Like, what is your goal? What are you trying to be? Are you trying to be fit? You trying to be well? You trying to be in extreme fitness? You know what I mean? So you're going to have people that are like, oh, I'm going to still go out with my friends, but I'm actually going to eat beforehand the things that I know I'm going to want to eat that are good for me, so that when I go to dinner, I'm not going to eat as much as I would if I were like hungry. Okay? That's taking it. Now, is that a healthy relationship for with food? Maybe. That's their life, not yours. Okay? That's their choice. So it's just making some good decisions, that's all. So does that answer your question? Okay. So don't beat yourself up if you decide to have cake. Okay? Just don't eat cake every day. Okay? All right. So tactics. So when we talk about tactics, the first 4 weeks, this is kind of the more committed version. I'm not going to use the word extreme to this because I don't want you to think that it's extreme. The more committed version, meaning you're going to measure and weigh your food. Okay? Now, if you can't weigh and measure your food, because maybe if you do meal prep and then you're like, hey, do you want to go out to dinner tonight? Right? Don't beat yourself up. Try to make good choices. Right? But you can use the eyeball method for how much. Right? And so I try to lay these things out. So palm size set or fist, right, of protein. If you're kind of picturing your plate. Okay? Then, of course, you've got 2 palm sizes of vegetables. Yes, you can. The people aren't going to be upset if you ask the waitress or ask them to not cook your food in oil. I promise you, if you're going to any of these steakhouses around here, they're going to use some sort of oil on your food to cook it faster. Okay? And I'm going to probably guess because it's cheaper, they're going to use not the best oils. You can ask them to cook it in butter instead. Okay? You're not... The challenge I think most people have is they let external factors play into their food choices. Oh, here we go again. Desiree's going to have to ask for her food a certain way. Right? Fuck you. This is my way of eating. Right? Don't beat me up because you don't make good choices. Right? You don't have to say that to them. I mean, if you want to, it's okay. But if you've changed the way you eat and you go out with friends, if you ask for things to be a certain way, you get eyeballed. The same as if you go out and it's like, you're not drinking tonight? No, dude, I'm the DD. You know what I mean? Everyone's been in that situation. And they're just trying to, they're projecting their own awareness that they're not making good choices. Okay? So, palm size, protein, 2 palms for your carbohydrates, or your if you're going to go 1, if you're going to have starchy things, right? If you're eating vegetables, it'd be 2. So if you're kind of putting things together, how much you want to eat. And then the same thing with the nuts and seeds or your fats is that you want to take into consideration, especially where you go, right? They're probably already going to use some sort of fats to cook your food, and then just having some fats to the side, or maybe it's just chicken and broccoli or steak and broccoli, and something, whatever it is, right? There's nothing wrong with those 3 things. It's just, if you go, I'm going to use this as an example, a Longhorn or Outback or anything like that, you can go and get a steak, a baked potato, and some veggies, right? The only thing that you need to do is say, hey, can you not cook those with oil? That's it. Nothing else changes, right? Do you put butter on that potato? Yeah, there's your fats. You know what I'm saying? So you don't have to make a lot of changes when you go out. Just ask. Okay? Questions about that, the kind of eyeball method, that tactic. All right. So, tools of staying on track. So I think the key one is that motivation factor. So that, as we've said before, this idea that, oh man, I had a bad day, I guess the whole week's gone, is asking yourself, why am I doing this? Okay? Am I trying to be healthier? Am I trying to make good decisions? Am I trying to do this for the long term? Because if you get wrapped up in how you ate that particular meal, right, it's just a negative feedback loop. And so ask yourself why. Because that's going to determine how much commitment you have to that continuum and how far you go towards that fitness level. Because as much as I love to hear people say, man, I've lost 20 pounds. Awesome. Are you going to keep it off? That's the key. because a lot of times we get goal-oriented. I've made it to my number. Awesome. Are you going to keep that? Because too many times we've either experienced it or have had friends or someone talk about it. It's like, lost my 20 pounds. You meet them again, a year later, they're 30 pounds overweight. What happened? They hit their goal, right? So yes, it is a lifestyle change, but when you hit that number, now you're just playing around. This is where I want to be. I got to maintain this. Because if you are, and this is true, your body gets to a homeostasis level with a weight, obese or not. If you've been overweight for 10 years and you're 50 pounds overweight, your likelihood of losing that 50 pounds is pretty good. Keeping it off is extremely difficult because you know what your body wants to do? Go back to where it was. And so it's going to take you a longer period of time for your body to recognize that that 50 pounds isn't coming back, so that your new homeostasis is to wherever you are now. And I think a lot of times when people start thinking about their motivation is that I'm thinking about this particular number in my head that I must achieve. So you got two things that happen. You make it, you don't sustain it. And number two is what we talked about earlier is I can't get that last 5 pounds. So what happens when that last 5 pounds doesn't happen, right? We get unmotivated, we start to binge eat, and the next thing you know, we're not at the gym, and we're not eating right, and fucking 6 weeks go by, and we're now 20 pounds overweight again, because I felt bad for myself. So, trying to have that internal motivation, having the surrounding support system, just like we have in here for the fitness side of it, okay, is important. Keeping yourself accountable, holding yourself accountable, finding a buddy that you can do this with, right? Sharing the success, sharing the hard times so that you can make it through whenever you have that negative energy in you, to not want to just say, fuck it. Because we're all guilty of that, right? Questions about staying on track. Habits. So the habit here is just going through this idea of how do I stop eating ice cream during the week? And so it's reframing things. So we can use this as an example. This is the example from the nutrition piece, or from the nutrition things. And what I would say is you're trying to find ways to replace the thing that you don't want in your life, right? Because if you kind of go through it, right, what do I do when I eat ice cream? Well, I sit down and watch TV, right? And so it just kind of builds on itself. And so just like if someone starts from not being in the gym to coming to the gym after work, what is the first thing that you need to do when you want to go to the gym after work? Pack your shit, right? Find a friend that's going to hold you accountable. You come into the gym today, did you see the workout? Right? We all know that one, right? Having that person to support you so that you're not out there feeling by yourself of like, man, I got to do this by myself, right? You got to have a certain crazy mindset to be able to do all this on your own, okay? Nutrition's the same, right? Meal prep with someone. Go to lunch with someone. Something that it keeps you encouraged to make good choices, okay? That's it. Now, you can have a nutritionist. We have one here. Jess Maxwell can help a few people, right? But having that person or that thing to hold you accountable to continuing to make good decisions, okay? But don't beat yourself up if you make a bad one. Move on, okay? But changing your habits is key. What do you find yourself doing when you're doing those things? Like this one says, I'm watching TV. I would bet most of us are scrolling on something mindless that's not helping us be productive. Okay? So, good habits. Questions about that one? Because we're almost done. So, when we start moving on, so now we want to wrap things up because we're going to start talking about supplementation, right? And then stimulants. So, first thing you need to ask yourself is where am I on the sickness, wellness, fitness continuum? Be honest with yourself. The easiest way to do that, health markers, right? Or some sort of benchmark with weight, body fat. Those are also markers as well, right? Or I want to be, I want to be able to do this particular exercise quicker. Some sort of assessment. Where am I at? Where do I want to be? Be realistic with that. If you're at sickness, you are not getting to fitness very quickly without becoming well first. Okay? Then ask yourself, how far do I want to go? Understanding that the extremes on both ends are exactly those, extremes. Okay? Someone that does nothing all day, drinks soda, eats like shit, has type 2 diabetes, where are they at? All the way on that extreme. In order for them to become fit, right, the next whomever you want to insert person here, they've got to get to the other side through the wellness aspect of it. So that's the first thing. Then applying it by following that. If someone asks you, what do you eat? What should I eat? First sentence on that board. How much should I eat? Second one on that board. Okay? Now, if you want to go beyond the surface level, scratching the surface level, that's just scratching the surface. Right? What and how much? Then we start to dive into all of those things regarding the quantity, how, like the percentages, okay, and then how to track it, okay. So, getting on to the kind of the intangibles of supplementation. I want you to understand this. Supplements are exactly that. They are supplementing whole foods, okay. They are not something that you necessarily need every day. The first thing you should be focusing your foundation of nutrition on, especially those first 4 weeks, is finding high quality foods that work best for you. Okay? If your body doesn't do well with certain things, don't eat it just because it's on the fucking list. Right? Find something that works best for you. Okay? Eat that the most. Now, when you get into supplements, that is exactly what we're trying to do. We're supplementing whole foods because we're unable to eat whole foods at that particular time. Okay? So, one of the things that we haven't really covered is the idea of omega-3s versus omega-6s. Those are the different types, certain types of fats. What I can tell you with highly processed foods, most of them are higher in what are called omega-6s. I'm not going to get into the details of that if you want to. The better version, of course, would be the omega-3s. The idea is that right now, as a country, we are about a 1-to-20 ratio. Some people are probably much higher. You want to be closer to about a 1-to-5 to 1-to-2. One way of doing that, if you're not able to eat organic meats and fish and all of the things that are higher in omega-3s, is to supplement that with a fish oil. The one that I have used and still use today is by a company called CCFT. They sell, it's a teaspoon a day, right? They've got different flavors. So those of us that have taken fish oils and think it tastes like crap, it's amazing what CCFT does in terms of the quality of their oil and the taste of the oil. I prefer orange. I think they have lemon. Christy Barnett used to get I think it was spearmint. So there are flavors out there. A little pricey, right? You don't need to take it every day if you don't want to. But I have never found a bad review or had anyone have a bad experience. We used to actually sell it here. I think the sticker might be on that board over there still. CCFT. Okay, if you just Google it, you'll find it. That's and that's going to help you balance that omega-3, omega-6 ratio. Okay. Second one, of course, would be proteins. Now, keeping it surface level, there are multiple versions of proteins, right? Whey, casein, that's 2 kind of dairy-based proteins. Then you have your vegan proteins. Let's just skip those. Okay. All right, if you're a vegan, that's okay, right? But you're going to have to work harder. Or a vegetarian, you're going to have to work harder to get good quality whole proteins. Okay? If you wanted a plant-based protein, there is a company that I know that has an extremely good plant-based protein that tastes very good. So that's an option. The other one too is if you have maybe some lactose issues, egg-based protein, right? You can get that as well. And then of course your collagens, which is not a complete protein. A lot of people like to throw that into their coffees and stuff like that. But just remember, it's not a whole protein. going to be good for skin, nails, bones, all those kinds of things. So another option as well. How much? Which brand? We sell certain brands here. I recommend certain brands. What I would simply say is that don't buy it from Walmart. Okay. Here's why I say that, and knowing enough, having learned enough about these, is the products that you see, especially supplements in Walmart, are not the same supplements that are in GNC, even if it's the same company. And the reason being is because when you go to Walmart as a seller, they tell you how much they're going to pay you for each product. So if your wholesale rate is $10, Walmart says I'm going to give you $8, and you want to get into Walmart's stores, you're going to find a way to get your product in that store, and it's not by cutting your price, right? So you're going to find less quality ingredients to get it in their stores. Now, am I going to sell that same thing to GNC? Probably not. Now, I'm giving two different examples, but understand that where you buy them from is going to probably dictate the quality of it too sometimes. Okay? So just be smart, right? You don't have to buy anything fancy. There are plenty of online versions that you can, or online stores that you can get it from. The ones I would say is, I've had good experience with Podium. I know there's, or is it EarthFed, Brendan? EarthFed. And then I like MTS Way. So tigerfitness.com is a good one. Definitely recommend all of their flavors. Haven't had a bad one yet. Okay. So protein supplement if you need it. Okay. I like it especially if you're on the run. Because as we've gone back in the beginning, what the thing that is the foundation of what we need? Our daily intake of protein. Okay. If you had to pick the thing to hit every day in your numbers, is your protein. Okay? Don't let that slip. That is very, very important. If you had to look at it from the standpoint of elimination, what is my highest priority today is getting my protein in every day. And if you can't get that in with whole foods, protein supplements are a good alternative. Okay? Next one. Creatine. So, creatine and beta-alanine, I'm going to cover these quickly. Number one is that these two supplements are probably two of the most researched supplements that are out there, creatine and beta-alanine. Creatine, for men and women, will help, right, with muscle endurance. Okay, I'm just going to leave it there. They work. 5 to 10 grams, most people 5 grams every day. Every day. Every day. Okay? Derek, if you need to put it in your beer, you put it in your beer. Put fucking 5 grams of creatine. Whatever you need to do. Every day. Okay? So, side effects for creatine, very minimal. Some have cases of where they've had some upset stomachs. I've never experienced that, right? Some people do. Just going to kind of get that disclaimer. Beta-alanine, the only side effect I've ever seen, and I know I've experienced it literally every time I take it, is that I feel like my face is going to, I'm just trying to peel my face away. It's just like all around my face. Flush, just like, it's crazy. That's the only side effect, right? It's just weird.
That's all?
It's not, it's not bad. It feels weird. It's like a tingly feeling. Don't take it at night, yeah. Yeah, it makes you feel itchy. That's a great way to put it. It's just this kind of weird, flushy, itchy feeling. But again, 30 minutes. Yeah, hour tops. Depends on what you take. Muscle endurance. Yep, same thing. So if you look, when I say no negative side effects, I do mean that. Now, is there a side effect? Yes, I just explained it. It's just like the kind of itchy feeling in your like, and it's primarily in your face, like your neck from here up. It's weird. There was a word in there that I'm not smart enough to pronounce, and so I didn't put it on there because I didn't want you to think I was going to pronounce it. The actual tinglet, yeah. No. I know niacin. Niacin's the ingredient. There's your body's response. There was a word for it. All right, last but not least, okay, because we're almost done. Almost an hour. Everyone's favorite, right? Alcohol. I'm not going to cover caffeine. What you should say is caffeine, there is a benefit to caffeine, right? Just manage it. Same thing with alcohol, though. I'm only calling this out because we all drink, right? Not all of us, but we all have beers, right? Is that I just want you to understand the impact. So, number one, your cortisol levels, your stress hormone, okay? So that is going to be increased. For men, decreased testosterone levels, okay? And then the third one, your decrease in protein synthesis. That means your ability to process the protein so that you can have, muscle repair. That's the idea we'll just leave it at that, what protein synthesis is. Okay? Your body's ability to repair muscle. Okay? So, when I cover the touchy subject of alcohol, right, I go back to this. Where do you want to be? On that continuum. That's it. I leave it at that. How much you decide to consume is the same as if you wanted to eat a donut every day. Where do you want to be? You have to ask yourself that. That's it. Okay? So I'm not here to preach because, right, I will have a beer every so often as well. What I can say for myself personally is that I do recognize the benefits of not doing it, and when I do, how my body responds, especially as I've gotten older. Okay? The Whoop band, or wherever that is on my hand, actually helps because you get a recovery score. And I can tell how my body responds if I've had some drinks that previous day. And it's definitely not in the green. Okay? Any questions?
Do you have any tips for someone with like the tracking that tend to have like negative relationship with food as far as like going extreme?
Yeah. So the question was ways of tracking when you have an unhealthy relationship with tracking. That's definitely a tough one to say at the beginning because in order for you to be able to know where you need to be, tracking is the best solution. What I would say for anyone that struggles with that is recognize that it is temporary. Meaning, I'm not asking you to track forever. I'm asking you to track for a brief period. Because if you really think about this, you are going to eat for the rest of your life, I hope. Every day. Right? So this idea that, man, I have to track for 4 weeks, that is a very, very small period of time in your life. Right? That you would need to say sacrifice or feel uncomfortable with your relationship as long as you're trying to get the numbers. So how you approach that mindset has to be a positive, like I'm trying to set myself up for success long term. It's because if it becomes a burden, and I've felt this too, if it becomes a burden, it's like, fuck, I have to track picking up, and you're on your phone, like we're already on our phones too much of tracking our food. If it becomes a burden to you, then that's when you have to recognize it's unhealthy and that you need to stop and start focusing on things like eyeball method. But someone that has an unhealthy relationship with that at the beginning, what I'm trying to get you to understand is that think of it as a very small time window of having to go through that process so that you can get through it, get your numbers, get your baseline, and then you have at least something to start with so that in the long term, you have an understanding of, okay, what is it like for me to eat every day? Does that make sense? Does that help? Yeah. Okay. I know it's not the best answer, but it's the uncomfortable answer. Like, yeah, you're going to have to do the things you don't want to do for a short period of time. Okay? Any other questions? Don't hesitate.
I think going off that, because I'm tracking my food for bodybuilding,
Yep.
powerlifting, and CrossFit, you just learn what quantities are. Like, you don't have to track it. You just know. You start to learn. So it's kind of just an education piece, really. The first, tracking it.
But once you track, so a good way of looking at it is, especially with meal prep, number one, kind of going back to to keys to success. Meal prep is very important for most people because if we are not prepared, and this is in general, if we're not prepared, we do not make good choices, right? So pick a day, multiple days, whatever. We have easy fresh meals, right? That sell here. There are other. I think you should support a local business. There are other companies if you want to support other companies too. Or meal prep is key to success because if I have my meal with me, I'm most likely going to eat that than making shitty choices and going somewhere else or not eating at all, which is probably worse for most of us, right? The quick and dirty, I'm just going to grab something and not even thinking about what I eat. Meal prep. So to Matt's point is that if you meal prep for a month, right, and you know that every meal consists of A, B, and C, and I'm not saying you have to eat the same thing. Matt has probably experienced this too. Chicken, broccoli, rice, right? Or ground beef, right? Every day, multiple times a day. But it ingrains in you that you're eating for a particular reason. That gets back to your why, right? And so once you get through the kind of early phase of learning what how much looks like, then you can strip away that tracker because you already know each of my meals looks like this. Okay? But the key thing is asking yourself, how much of a priority is this? Right? Recognizing that if I'm not making these things a priority, that all of the things above that nutritional section of the theoretical hierarchy of an athlete are going to suffer. Some more than others, right? Or I'm not going to see the success that I would like to. Okay? Questions? Awesome. Look at that. Hour and 5 minutes. Thank you guys so much. If you have any questions, don't hesitate. If you want to take it a step further, we can definitely give you some more information. If you're looking for some nutritional coaching, we can try to get you engaged with Jess Maxwell if that's something you would like to do. But good starting point, some self-reflection of where you are, where you want to be, and then taking some of these things and keeping it this simple, guys. It is this simple, is when it really boils down to it, right? Keeping that in mind every day. And if you deviate, it's okay. Get back on track, restart on Monday. Just kidding. All right, guys. Thank you. All right, appreciate it. Well done.